and welcome to this first session in our course entitled Religious Worlds. Throughout the course of this semester, we'll be examining what it means to study religion. Now, this is opposed to what would be traditionally called the study of theology. In this particular course, I want to introduce you to what has become known in the academic community as that course of study in religion or religious studies. So what we will be looking at today in particular is briefly discussing what it looks like to study religion and offering an introductory definition of religious studies. So without further ado, let's dive right in to what it means to actually study religion. What is religion in the first place, and what is this phenomenon that we call religion? Well, if we look at the term religion, we can define it very broadly as that pervasive phenomenon that invades and shapes the narratives of our lives. Now, there are two key words that I want to highlight for you and that I think will be important as we proceed forward. The first is invades. What does it mean to invade? Well, religion invades our lives as individuals through the social parameters and helps us explain reality that we see around us in society. So, religion is always going to be found in the context of community in some way, and within the context of community, the different elements of reality that are hard to explain are then able to be explained in the context of religion. Not only does it invade, but as we also see in this definition, it shapes. And in what way can we say that it shapes? Well, not only does religion help us to navigate the complexities of society, but it shapes us insofar as it helps us identify the answers to existential questions that accompany the narratives or the stories of our lives. And so we see religion both invading our societies and shaping us, even in a larger sense as individuals, as it helps to explore those existential realities. Now, what you probably have noticed right away then is that religion is both helping us in a personal way and in a communal way. And as you think of religion, you can think of it in three different areas of study. And I want to introduce you very quickly to the three ways that religion might be studied in the academy. These are going to have some sort of relationship with one another, but all of them are going to be studied on different levels. The first one that we arrive at is religion as relationship. We'll then explore as relationship that religious worlds within which we live are made and sustained within a network of relationships. This idea originally was proposed to us by an individual by the name of Bob Orsi in his textbook called Between Heaven and Earth. And in this book, Orsi suggests that the religious worlds within which we live are made and sustained by this network of relationships. Relationships between societies, but amongst family members, amongst devotees and their leaders within these religious groups. And what he would suggest is that the only way to properly understand and maintain a religious identity is to understand religion in the context of relationship. Now, this can take place in a couple of ways, and I hope you'll pick up on this. When we go into a study of religion, there are basically two types of relationship in the study of religion. There is the intersubjectivity of the researched and the intersubjectivity of the researchers on religion. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, there is this constant tension that we feel in the study of religion between us being those objective studiers of the research objects, so of those who actually practice the religions that we look at. But there also has to be a step in our study of religion where we study ourselves, which we turn inward and we examine our own motives, we examine our own thoughts on this process. And with that said, I think it's important that we turn to the next study of religion, which is not only religion as relationship, but now we turn to religion as theology. And within the context of religion as theology, we are looking now at devotees of a particular religion. This is what would be more pure to us who call ourselves Christians. We would be studying religion in terms of theology. It's confessional in nature. It makes sure that we are properly confessing what we believe about God. And within this context, religion takes on forms that are both rational and non-rational, or we might say natural and supernatural. Because within the context of theology, we're not just concerned about religion in terms of rationally explaining reality, but we are concerned in this notion of revelation. Um, and we want to see in some way that God is speaking and imparting knowledge to us about Himself. That takes shape within religion as theology, and it's left behind in some of the other objects. So, religion as objective reality or religion as relationship. Now, as we move to religion as objective reality, this is what has really taken shape within the context of more secular universities. And I give to you just a few examples here as we look at religion as objective reality. Within this context, each of the researchers presented would assume that religion is a subject out there that can be studied as a fact. It's not something that impacts the particular researcher, but that religion can just be looked at and taken up. So religion or religions exists in a sort of static reality. The approaches that are taken are first, this was taken up by a man by the name of David Hume, who lived from 1711 to 1776. And he is the one who, according to Peter Gay, he introduces the historic mission of the Enlightenment to overthrow natural religion. So it was his aim, David Hume's aim, to ultimately split theology off from the study of religion and to try and produce something, as he would call it, more pure. So he's trying to approach this from a rationalistic perspective. Now, beyond David Hume, we then can look at a man by the name of Ludwig Feuerbach. And Ludwig Feuerbach, again, lived in the 1800s. His main contribution to religion, although he would call himself a theologian, was ultimately to split theology again from religious or rational study. And he would do this by talking more and more about religion as a projection of humanity. So he would assume that in one way or another, religion is merely a projection of who we are in ourselves onto the divine canvas. Now, again, he's trying to rescue theology in whatever way that he is doing this. But ultimately, he can go no further than assuming that God is not real, but that God is ultimately just a projection of who we are in our deepest selves or who we want to be, and place that onto eternal canvas. Now, moving to some of the other masters of suspicion, we turn to a figure by the name of Karl Marx, who, though he was interested in economic theory at large, was also very concerned about religious theory. Karl Marx, one of his famous phrases, as you've probably heard throughout time, man makes religion, religion does not make man. The religious world is but the reflex of the real world. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the sentiment of a heartless world, the soul of a soulless condition. It is the opium of the people. Within this context, Marx again trying to put to death this idea that God really exists, is wanting to still study religion, but he's wanting to study it more from a sociological or economic perspective. And he introduces something completely new and novel in this way. Now, following after Marx was the sociologist by the name of Emil Durkheim. And Durkheim is going to introduce a concept of religion meeting our social needs. So as a sociologist, as one of the founders of sociology, Durkheim is going to propose that religion's main function within society is that it meets the needs of social order and stability, and as such we can continue to fall back on religion. He doesn't want to say anything true or honest about the reality of God, but rather he would like to focus for just a few minutes on religion as something that actually helps society at large. After Emil Durkheim, we turn to two psychologists, Sigmund Freud and Erich Fromm. Now, Sigmund Freud is assuming that religion is meeting the psyche's need from absolution of guilt. So it fulfills a sort of neurotic need to overcome the guilt and shame that we as human beings feel on a consistent basis since we are young. Now, Erich Fromm, on the other hand, would propose in a slightly more positive sense, even though he's still kind of approaching this from the psychology of religion standpoint, that humans find a stable frame of reference in religion. So it's not that we are trying to overcome some guilt that is latent within us from birth, but that ultimately We're trying to find some mental stability, and that's why it's good for us to turn that way. Now, in recent years, we can turn even not only from the sociology and psychology of religion, but others have studied religion from a biological perspective. Individuals like John Bowker would use religion and talk about how it is found universally because religion protects gene replication and the nurturing of children, and so it ultimately protects us in our societies. Religion becomes good for our health, if you will, and so individuals like John Bowker are interested in studying religion, again, not from a theological perspective, but so that they can ultimately talk about its benefits for society at large. Well, what are some of the positives that we can see from studying religion as an objective reality? The positives, before I get to this statement here, the positives would be that uh, figures like Freud and Durkheim ultimately open up the doors for us to better understand religion in its communal and its individual sense. So they help us to understand the positive roles that religion plays in society. And the way that it is beneficial for society and it is beneficial for religion, I mean for individuals rather. But on the problematic sense, if we insist that we only study religion from an objective point of view, not ever being gripped by its truths, then we turn into what Vincent Carpanzo says, or Campanzano says, we become guilt-inspiring, voyeuristic intentions. We have these intentions that are good at first, but ultimately we just are voyeurs. And in another phrase, he would say we become sophisticated peeping toms as we look in. Orsi, in his review of this, ultimately says, and I quote, "To study a world of meaning and practice other than one's own means making one's arduous way from an initial experience of difference that may be deeply disoriented or even alienating towards understanding." He describes it as a young child who is peering in on his grandmother who's in prayer, or maybe a mother in her room speaking in tongues late at night. It's not something that grips us per se, but it's something that we observe from a point of indifference, and we, through this study, come to a sort of understanding ourself. Now, I want to go back to what we said just a minute ago, because I think this is important. It's important to remember that when we study religion, there is a sense in which we are studying those who practice the religion, but we are also studying ourselves. And so, even though there may be a form of religious study that tries to remain objective, I would argue that that's never fully possible, and that there's always an intersubjectivity of both the researched and the researchers. And that when we come to the table of religious studies, we are going to bring ourselves to the table as well, and that will cause a certain level of mixture between our beliefs and the beliefs of those we're studying. And we will walk away, especially if we start out on this objective side of religious studies, by mixing our perspectives and distorting the perspectives of those who actually hold religious beliefs to be true, as those who study religion as theology. So that becomes the problem that we see in and of itself. Now, let me close very quickly by going over 5 different ways that the academic world studies religion at large, and we'll move through these fairly quickly, and then I will be done. But the 5 ways that we see religion being studied is, number 1, or A, through psychological, sociological, and anthropological methods. This is functional in nature. It means that we understand that religion plays an important role, or it is an important aspect of human behavior. We can also turn, not only for the psychological, sociological, or anthropological, we can turn to the philosophical. So in this way, we're wanting to not understand the benefits that religion plays for us as a society or as individuals, but we're wanting to understand the concepts, the belief statements that are embedded within religion. The third way is a more scientific model of studying religion, and in this way, it's wanting to study the antidotes that are lying beneath certain, what they would say, superstitions or follies. So this is a materialistic aspect of studying religion, and we see a lot of that in the new atheism that's out there in front of us. The fourth way of looking at religious studies is through historical methods. So this is a contextual aspect. We find greater tolerance and appreciation for religious studies once religious studies is embedded within history and the important role that religion has played throughout the history of man. Again, this is not a form of religious study that's trying to help us understand the theology, but it is trying to help us understand the context of religion in society. The next aspect is the theological aspect or the confessional aspect. And it's within this context that we affirm the religious beliefs, that we uphold them and we move forward with them. This is confessional, as I've said, and we would believe that there is a mixture of both rational knowledge but also revelation that is supernatural in nature and goes beyond what we can rationally understand and explain. Finally, there is the postmodern conception of understanding religion. This is a deconstructive aspect of studying religion, and this was introduced by key figures such as Jacques Derrida in France, and it's a notion that deconstructs the whole notion of religion in and of itself. So it's trying to break down what we understand religion to be, so that something else can be built and we can understand what's going on underneath the surface of religion, since so much of our language is contextually based to begin with. So I hope this gives you a brief understanding of what it means to study religion in an academic environment. And as we move forward in the class, we will look at defining religion in and of itself, and then we'll go through the various aspects and components of what make up a religion as we press forward. Thanks so much, and I look forward to being with you in the future.